Who had the chance to check where his Python passes? Will it help if we give it as an official assignment? It's really something that you need to do. I will tell the tutors to give it as an official assignment. Okay. So let's start. Okay. So, no, it's not working. Start. What's going on? זה לא מה שאני רוצה שיהיה. זה עושה פרזנטרוויו, אבל המסך הפוך ממה שם.
ותנסי כאילו...
ניתקתי, חיברתי.
לא, זה כן מקרין.
זה מקרין, אבל זה מקרין את ה... זה לא מקרין מה שזה אמור.
תנסי כאילו ללחוץ נורמלי משהו על זה.
I'm sorry about all these issues, though it's really not my fault. Try one last time. Okay, start. If it's not working, we will just start. I will show you the presentation after. We'll leave it another 2 minutes to work, and then. Okay, I think it's working. Okay, good. So, as every time, we do a quick summary of what we've done so far. So this is the list. זהו, סידרתי את זה. תודה. This is the list of all the subjects that we discussed already, and last time we discussed something very important, which I said is basically Python superpower is the ability of Python to use modules which are files written in Python, either by us. Okay, we did our first module, and I showed you how to import the module that you write. Then I also showed you the standard library, and we checked where it's living in your computer. And we also entered some of the codes of the standard library. I told you that there is a very big amount of modules and functions that are already installed with Python the moment you install it on your computer. And I also mentioned some libraries which are not installed with Python, which you have to install. So for example, NumPy and SciPy are part of this very, very standard, it's not the standard library, but they are very, very standard. Everybody uses them. Did you install them? Yes, it worked for everybody to install NumPy and SciPy too. And I also mentioned that almost every scientific community nowadays has its own libraries with custom functions that do things that are specific to each field. So I know that in biology there are all kinds of Python libraries, and in astrophysics definitely we have a big library called AstroPy, which we can all contribute to, and it's very, very useful. So this is basically the superpowers of Python. I would say one of the main reasons to use it is this the existence of all these libraries and your ability to contribute to it, and the fact that others have already optimized and written these libraries for you. And today what we will do is we will talk a bit more about NumPy. I just gave you a taste last time, so we will try things together, and I will encourage you, like every time, to try things on your computer at the same time. And we will quickly talk about SciPy. So SciPy is a good example of a library that is very commonly used, but maybe slightly less than NumPy. Okay, so I personally don't know all the commands, all the functions in the SciPy modules. I know some of them, which are very useful. I will give you a few examples, and I will show you one of the very useful ones called SciPy Interpolate. Okay, it's used to interpolate data. And if we talk about the exam, so for NumPy, we really expect you to know the basic commands that we talked about already and we will talk about today. For some SciPy, we expect you to know that the functions I will talk about today exist. We don't expect you to know all the syntax, okay, by heart. This is not something we expect. But we do expect you to know that if you need to do some complicated integration or optimization, okay, the first library you would go and check if there is something for you is SciPy, okay? And then I will also give you an intro to matplotlib, which is the library which we use for what? Can you guess? Has plot in it?
Graphs.
Right. So matplotlib is the basic library that we use for plotting things. Okay, any data. This is super basic. So this too, I will try to give you to differentiate between what we expect you to know by heart. If we wake you up in the middle of the night to just know how to code. Okay, there are some things we expect you to know. There are other things like plotting things in 3D or 2D. These are not things we expect you to know. We expect you to have already seen it working and know that it can work and it exists, and you can ask Google if you need it specifically for your research problems. But the 1D, the plotting two 1D arrays, this is something we expect you to know, and I will give you a list of the commands that you need to know. Okay? Okay. So last time we talked about the fact that although you could in principle do all kind of array-like manipulation without NumPy, NumPy is really essential. It adds much more effective, efficient, rapid language array to Python, and it's been optimized in C, so it's pretty fast. Okay, I gave you an example where we did the same things with the list and with NumPy, and NumPy was much faster. And hi, Raz, of course. And so I showed you a few things with NumPy. Today we will try them, and we talked about the fact that operations are made element-wise. So if I have two NumPy arrays, A and B, and I do A multiplication symbol B, it doesn't do a matrix multiplication, right? It multiplies things element-wise. Okay, so first element with first element, second. Okay, so this is very important. I also showed you a linear algebra library that is very convenient if you want to do a matrix multiplication instead. And what else? We also talked about the Boolean arrays, where you want to select an array only where a certain condition is verified, right? And we saw that this is something very easy to do with NumPy and very, very convenient. So I also gave you a few examples on how to initialize an array. These are all functions that we expect you to know, okay? How to make a 2D array that is full of ones, full of zeros, or a diagonal ones. And I said that all these two could be a way to initialize an empty array, which you haven't populated yet. But really, they are not the best way, because you could want to populate your array with zeros or with ones, and then how do you differentiate between an empty place in your array and a place which you already populated? So I mentioned this NumPy empty. Here it's, of course, it's NP, a small NP, okay? Okay, so this was the solution that I showed you. You can basically create an empty array with a type object, which means it can have any type, mixed type too. It doesn't have to be all strings, all numericals, or okay, you can have an array of arrays, right? You can basically put anything in a NumPy array, and this is the best practice to basically initialize things. And I also mentioned that NumPy provides you a solution for loading data into Python. Okay, it's not the preferred solution. The preferred solution, I will show it to you when we talk about Panda. Did you hear about the Panda library? For those of you who are familiar with Python. So Panda is slightly younger than NumPy. It started to become very commonly used only in the last few years, but it's much, much better than reading data with NumPy for all kinds of reasons, much more friendly. But still, this is a fair solution if you want to load an array into your code. And I will show you now an example for this. Okay, so let's go to our PyCharm terminal. There is a few commands in NumPy that I wanted to show you before we move on. NumPy 2. Okay, so I'm not sharing my. You don't see my screen. Okay, now you do see my screen, right? Okay, so there are a few comments that I wanted to show you. We talked about NP arrange, so numpy as NP. We talk about NP arrange, which is basically creating a linearly spaced array of numbers. You remember? So, for example, let's try this. Okay, so this is simply generating an array of numbers. You can also log space numbers, so log, I think that's the one. Maybe there is one called linspace too. I don't remember the log space ones. Probably this one. Okay, let's not talk about it right now. So we talked about arrange. Okay, you can check. So NP array. Let's assume I have a 2D array 4, 5, 6. And I want to ask what's the shape of this 2D array. Hi, Anat. Okay, so let's print the shape of A. Okay, it's a 2-line by 3 columns array. Okay, and one thing I didn't show you last time, but which is also very important, is that you can also make n by n arrays in NumPy. You're not constrained to 2D arrays. You can have many more. You can have any dimension, basically. Okay, I mean, it's limited by memory, of course, but you can have arrays with all kinds of different shapes. It doesn't have to be 1D or 2D. Okay. Okay, there is one command which I didn't show you last time, which I wanted to show you. First, let's say a word about the difference between shape and len. Okay, so you see that shape is giving me 2 by 3, right? Whereas len is giving me just the dimension as if it was 1D. Okay, so this is important. Len and shape are acting differently. Okay, makes sense? And if I had a 1D if I had a 1D array and I asked the len, it would give me the total length of it. Okay, so print len b. So this will return 10. Okay, you see this? Okay. So this is important, the difference between shape and B. Shape is actually returning a tuple, okay, where you can index. You can index this tuple and access 3 or 2, okay? And len is looking at it as a 1D item, okay? So this is important. And one comment that I wanted to show you is how to sort an array. So let's give you an example. So print A. I like to sort np sort A. Let's see what it's printing. Okay, first, if I had a 1D array, you could guess what it's printing. So 4, 7, 5, 1, 8, 9. 3. Okay, so let's see what this would be returning. Okay, so sort A, if I have a 1D array, is just sorting my array in increasing order. Okay? And if I want to return the indexes that would sort the array, this is also extremely useful. Okay? Let's try to guess what would this return.
Sort
Arc sort. What would this return on A? Let's try to. Right. So Raz is suggesting that it would return 3, 6, 1, 0. Right? You understand why? So arc sort is returning an array of the indexes that sort an array. You understand? Does it make sense? The positions of the numbers if we wanted to sort them. Anat, it makes sense?
אני מתעדכנת.
Okay. As let's see. Okay, so this is what we have. Now let's assume that we want to sort a 2D array. Then we have to specify which axis we want to sort. Okay, so print np sort A and axis. Let's do it differently. 6, 5, 3, 4. Okay, so this is something that I really encourage you to try together with me. Okay, so when I sort according to axis 0, so axis 0 is basically the first, is the lines, okay? Okay, so this is something you should really try. What's going on? So axis 0 this is confusing, so I encourage you to try. I also get confused. So axis 0 is sorting it. Every column is being sorted. Okay. Axis -1, and I think 1 would give the same, but again this is confusing. Would sort line-wise. Right. Okay? So, bottom line here is that if I want to sort a 2D array, we should be careful. In Python, you will want to specify which axis you're sorting by, and it's very easy to get confused, so you can try it on a small example to make sure it's sorting it the way you want. Okay? So this was to show you what sort and arc sort are doing. Okay, and now we will move on to talk about how to load data. So I've prepared a small data file. Okay, so I have a data file. This is my data file. Okay, let's look at this. It has a header, okay, with a comment here, with the comment sign, and it has numbers. Here it has two other comments in the middle of the data, okay, and more numbers. Okay, so I will now show you what happens if I use NumPy gen from text. How is it loading the data? And then I will demonstrate that some of the keywords that we can use in NumPy gen from text are going to be crucial for making your life simple. So let's give it a try. Okay, so the first thing I'm doing is data. Okay, I want to load the data that is in example 5 spaced into a variable called data, into an array. Okay, so I'm reading it like this, and I want to print it. So let's see what's happening. Okay, so it's reading, it's simply reading it. It's reading it okay. 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 Now, why is it reading it in a good way? Although I have here comments in the middle of the file, it's because there is a keyword in NumPy gen from text which is called comments, where you can specify what is the character that starts a comment. Okay, so whenever it will see a line that starts with this character, it will just skip it, it will ignore it. Okay, and the default one is what? You can guess because it's been reading it okay. The default one is just the hashtag, okay? And this is why it's reading it okay. But let's assume that, okay, let's assume that I haven't put this hashtag. What will happen? What do you think will happen?
It will try to read the word a comment.
Right, and it will complain. Why? Because not because there are mixed strings, but because a comment, I have two things here, and it expects 3 things per line, right? Here it's writing, the error it's writing is that on line 3, it got 2 columns instead of 3, okay? Because a comments, but if I put a nice comment, what will happen now? Let's try to guess.
Still error because no.
So now it will not give an error, but it will not know how to read these things, so it will read them as nuns, as not a numbers. Okay? Okay, now let's try what happened if I put a comment that starts with a different character. Okay, I decided that my comments will start with a percentage character. Okay, so let's try my 5th lecture. Where is it? What will happen? What do you think will happen? The best way to learn is if we try to anticipate and then see if we're correct.
Also none.
A none? A none or an error? It's doing a none. Why? Let's try to understand. Because there are 3 characters here. Okay? But I don't want it, I want it to understand that this is a comment, that this time is a comment. I wanted to skip it. And this is where I can use the comments keywords. Okay, this is the default. The comments hashtag is the default, which means that if you don't specify it, it will think that this is the way to read the comment. And if you want to define a different character that starts a comment, you can use the keyword. So let's see what will happen now.
Error.
Error? Why an error?
Because you have hashtag comments
I have a hashtag?
on top.
Ah, maybe, right? So let's see. I think you're correct. So Raz is saying it will give an error because here we have a comment that starts with a hashtag. I actually think because there are okay. It will okay. Let's do it like this. Okay, so it's giving nuns. Why? Here I have 3 characters, and by default it will try to read the array as numerical stuff. Okay, so it doesn't give me an error because I have 3 things and everywhere else I have 3 things, right? But if I did this, now it's giving an error. Why? Because the first line is actually telling NumPy what is going to be the shape of the array. Okay, if it reads 2 columns, if it has 2 columns on this first line, it will expect there to be 2 columns everywhere. Okay, this is why it's complaining. Okay, so this is the comments thing. But you see that it ignored, if I put comments equal percentage, it just ignores all the lines which start with the percentage. Okay, another super important one is the delimiters. So by default, you can guess by looking at our example. By default, NumPy is looking at a space as the legitimate delimiter in your data. Okay? But very often you will be reading CSV files rather than spaced. So let's see what happens if I add commas everywhere without specifying to NumPy that the new delimiter is a comma. What do you think will happen? It will read it as what? As a 1 column, right? Because it doesn't see the comma as a legitimate delimiter. So let's try. Lecture. Okay, so it's reading nuns everywhere. Let's try to understand why. It's probably okay. Why is it reading nuns everywhere? This is an interesting example. So it thinks that the comma is not a legitimate delimiter, and it's trying to read this. But this is a mixed animal which has both characters, right? A comma is a character and numbers, right? You agree? So it doesn't know how to read it. It's returning a null. Okay, makes sense? So the way to deal with this is to tell it that the delimiter is the comma. Okay? And now it should be working. Oops, this is from last time. Okay, now it's working. You see that it's loading the data as we want it. Okay, now the last subtlety that I wanted to show you with NumPy Gen from text is if you have mixed types in your array. Okay, so assuming you have a big data set where the two first columns are I don't know, the age of the first column is the age of a population, the second column is the height of the people in this population, and the third column is the names. Okay, and so it's a string, it's not a number, and you want to be able to load this data into your code and to not be bothered by the fact that you have mixed type in your data. So let's try to give an example. Okay, I want to add here a string, and let's see what happens if I just give it like this. So how does it read the string that I added? You see, it's reading a none instead of the string because it just doesn't know how to deal with the mixed types. Okay, and in this case, the way to handle this is to specify dtype equal object. Okay, and when you specify this, NumPy understands that it should read everything. Okay, now here it's basically reading everything like as strings. The B here is 4 bits. Okay, what I would usually do in these cases, if you have some columns that are uniformly the same type, okay, uniformly strings or uniformly numbers, you can specify here types per column. Okay, but otherwise I would just read it this way and then convert things the way I want it. Okay, but at least you can load with this simple trick. You can load your data regardless of the types, and it doesn't introduce nuns in your data, in your code.
What kind of data does it think the numbers are?
It's reading it here like strings, but you can then convert it back to floats. And again, if you knew that all your columns but one are numbers, then you can easily specify here. You'd have to Google it, how to specify the format per columns. Okay? But this trick would avoid introducing spurious nuns in your data. So this is always good. Okay? Okay, I'm checking. This has mixed time. And there is one last very important. Let's assume that you have 3 lines of headers in your data, not 1 line. Okay, so, and the second line is here are some info on the header and more info. Okay, so there is a nice way to tell it to skip the 3 first lines. Okay, you just add a keyword, skip header, and you tell it the number of lines you want it to skip. Okay, now it's reading it fine. And if I didn't put this, it would complain, right? If I didn't tell it to skip the 3 first lines, it doesn't know how to deal with these lines, right? Because they don't start with a comment character and it doesn't know what they are. Okay? Now, all the things that I said now are things that you need to know. And they are all things that you don't have to worry about them if you use Panda instead of NumPy in order to load your data. Okay? So these are both things to remember, and also have in mind that if you load data with Panda, Panda already knows how to deal with mixed types. Okay, you would still have to specify delimiters, but you don't have to worry about different types of data. This is one of the beauties of Panda. It's saving this worry from us. It's basically handling mixed types of data. Okay, good. So we will do the break. Sorry.
ואז איך זה שומר, כאילו, באיזה טייפ זה שומר את ה...
אם אתה שם לו סטרינג, הוא יודע לקרוא סטרינג. הוא לא צריך שתגיד לו. אם אתה שם לו מספר, הוא יקרא מספר. So, תזכיר לי את השם,
מתן.
מתן. Matan is asking, in Panda, how will it read if I have mixed types? Will it read the numbers as numbers? Will it read... So if you have a number and you want it to be read as a string, you would have to specify. You do have a handle in Pandas on the format that you want your data to be read. Okay, if you have some numbers in your data and for some reason you want them to be read as strings, you can specify it. But by default, it will think for itself, okay, this is probably a string, this is probably a number, and it will not introduce nuns in your data. Replacing things by nuns in your data can lead to horrible bugs, okay? So Panda will do one more step to avoid adding nuns which do not exist in your data, okay? Good. So we'll do the break now today. Okay, so let's take a 10-minute break and then we will continue. I have a breastfed baby around here. Maybe you met him, her. So this is the reason the breaks are can slightly change from time to time. Okay, so we'll start at 1.
מעיין,
כן.
מתי שפנויה, אני חייבת להראות את אחותי התרגול.
אוקיי.
ספורה. תרגול.
מטריד, את רואה את אחותך מעלה כוס
מוזר
בבית?
ברמות. מוזר.
איזה שאלה מצחיק. ניסיתי בלי... כאילו... שאלתי את זה בשביל לחפש פונקציות ספציפיות, כאילו... חצי מהפונקציות לא הכרתי... לא יודע, אוריס.bst או אוריס.pass.base לא הכרתי. את אלה שאלתי אותה, כאילו. אז אחר כך ניסיתי. קצת הסתבכתי את זה, נתתי לי את ה-GPT אבל הוא לא הצליח. כאילו הקובץ הזה פשוט כבד מדי, זה 2.5 ג'יגה, אז אי אפשר פשוט עכשיו. כאילו ניסיתי להסביר לו, אז אני מניח שהוא לא יודע. כאילו לעשות את זה. שלנו זה על פי הרגשתכם לאחר גמר הרעיונות. כאילו כתוב מבוא שלנו זה על פי הרגשתכם לאחר גמר הרעיונות. אז כאילו בתור מהם שהרגש שלך יותר טוב, אז ראיתי להצביע אליו. פשוט הולך יותר. אני חושב שכן.
לא, לא נותנים לנו כאילו להגיד מה אנחנו רוצים. כאילו מתחשב. נורא מתחשבים בשביל שאני רוצה
כן. כי פשוט יש לכל חיל את השיקולים שלו בתוך עצמו לאיזה חיל ללכת. זה מה שאמרו שגם אם תראיינת למקום אחד יכולים להביא אותך למקום אחד. אבל מבחינת בתוך המקום. אבל כן, כאילו, יש הרבה דברים שפשוט זה מאוד משתנה.
כאילו כששמענו את זה בתחילת המיונים, זה לא משמעות אחרת. אחרי שאתה מבין
כל דבר שונה לגמרי. מה שכן אמרו זה שברגע שקיבלת חיל, יש לך סיכוי לבקש להגיע למחוזות. מהחיים. לא בהכרח הקשיבו לך, כאילו. להצביע הכל בעיה. יום החינוך כולם ב-28. זה יום אחד. יום אחד.
כל זה גדול.
בשיבוץ היחידות נעשה לך על ידי תרומה. קיבלתי איתו ב-8200 כתוב בדף המודיעין, שיבוץ היחידות נעשה לך על ידי תרומה. אז אם קיבלתי איתו ב-8200 ולא ב-81, אז אני קורא את זה במוח. נשאל עכשיו. כן. זה מכתב שבת. זה היה 14.
24.
לא, היה עשית 14. זה היה 14. עשית את השבת. ב-79.
קיצר.
תקשוב אמיתית זה חטיבת ההגנה. זה כבר... שהתקשוב שדיברנו עליו זה חטיבת הגנה. חטיבת הגנה זה מצב קריזי במוח, ואז לא תאם שלא תאם ולהתאם. לא יודע. כן.
לא מופיע לי הרעלות.
לא, עשית משהו ספציפי בתוכנות. אז זה שענית על הנושא, אתה יכול להסתכל על הפוטו הזה. שלך. לשים משהו. נראה לי כזה.
אם למישהו לא בא לדבר משהו, לא יאמן.
קודם כל אני אומר בתכנות, כאילו בגלים, אני עכשיו עשיתי בפורמט של החילוף, כאילו אני עכשיו מבקש מהגלים ולפקד.
נכון.
אני חושב על לא מסתבר, לא מתקסם.
באיזה אחד עשית? ב3?
אני עשיתי יפה עכשיו. עושה את זה ברצף, אז יש לא יודע מה מהם, ואז הוא הופך פשוט
באיזה גרסה? או 3?
לא. פשוט, מאוד.
עושה את זה בהמון. היכולת שלותה, כאילו, זה נראה כמו שמה. בטח הממצא, לא אין הפח. כאילו, אין מצב ויקרא את זה. אולי הוא ייתן את ChatGPT להגיד את זה נכון, אבל ChatGPT יגיד שזה נכון. קיבלתי גם 5 ימים, אני אקדמיזציה.
Okay, so I reminded you a few commands in NumPy which are important to remember, and then I showed you how to load data to your code, okay, with a small star that the moment you use Panda, things are much easier. But still, NumPy is a legitimate way to load data, so it's important to know how it works. Now, we will continue with the PowerPoint. And I will talk about SciPy for a minute. Okay, so this is what we just did. Okay, we used NumPy gen from text to load data to our code. Okay, and now let's say a few words about SciPy. So SciPy gives you additional tools, additional optimized tools. Again, it's written in C, it's optimized, it's fast, to do all kind of statistical tasks, mathematical operations which are slightly more elaborated. So I gave you here a few examples of functions which are available through the SciPy package. Usually you install them together because SciPy is, I think SciPy is using NumPy. Okay, there is a connection between them. Okay, so you can guess that optimize will have all kind of functions that allow you to do optimizations. Integrate has tools for doing integrals. Okay, these are the most common ones, I would say. And here I encourage you to have a look, have a check on the internet, have a quick check what these functions are helping you to do. Interpolate is very, very useful, I find. So when we talk about the plots, I will show you an example of how to use the interpolate function, okay, of SciPy. Okay, and from here we move on to talk about matplotlib, which is the module which we use to plot data. Okay, so it makes plotting data very, very easy and straightforward. I can tell you that I have experience with several programming languages, and Python matplotlib really makes it easy to make very quick plots. Okay, so the way we import it, I remember that we don't want to have to repeat the name of the module each time. So usually we import it as PLT. Okay, you can replace this with anything, with rabbit, as long as you're consistent and you remember how you imported it. Okay, and this is the simplest plot which we will do in a minute. We will try. Did you install matplotlib? Okay, I think through PyCharm it's also very, very easy. Okay, so the simple plot is the following. You just plot two NumPy arrays or two lists. It doesn't have to be a NumPy array what you plot. Okay, so this will plot these 3 points as the x-axis and this point in the y-axis. Okay, this is the simplest plot you can do. And then you have two options. Either you want to show the plot, you want to see it, in which case you add this line, or you want to save the plot, the figure, and you can save it as a PDF, you can save it as a JPEG, PNG, okay? Okay, so these are the two options. You can do both, of course, but if you do plt.show, it will open a window with the plot and not save it. So, and it will only move on to the next line after you switch off the window with the plot. Make sense? If you have a plt.show in your code, what it will do is it will open a window, show you the figure that you plotted, and until you close this window, it will not move on to the next lines. Okay, it will stop running your code in the plt.show. So if you want to both save it and show it, either you put the save before the show, or you remember that you will have to close your window before it can save. Okay? So this is the simplest plot, and of course there are many commands that we can add on top of these, okay, of these two lines to make your plot more beautiful, more elaborate. Okay, and I'm now showing you a list of commands that you need to know. Okay, we expect you to know them, and the exam is with you'll have your material, but we expect you to not have to go and look for this material. This is very basic. Okay, so the commands are the following: X label, Y label, and title are giving you a way to add a title, to add a label on the x-axis, a label on the y-axis, okay? And what it will take here as input are strings, okay? The string that you want to put as the x label or the title. Okay, they accept text, title too. Okay, and did you guys use LaTeX before? No? No? You do? Did you? Okay, so you will. If you're doing a degree in physics, you will very soon start using LaTeX, I hope. So the way to LaTeX can be very convenient if you want, for example, to add a Greek letter in your title or a math character in your title. So the way to do it is to add here a R. Okay, the R here before the string, it allows you to use LaTeX syntax here in the title. So that's very convenient. Okay, so the title here would be a Greek alpha and a Greek beta. I'll show you an example. Okay, there are also I don't know what happened. There are also a bunch of other commands that we want you to know. For example, Okay, I put in the notes, in the notes that are online, the list of commands that you will need to know. But this also includes limits, okay? If you have a very large data set and you want to plot your data only between 0 and 10, okay? You want your axis to be limited to a certain range, okay? There is a very easy way to do it. If you want to add a grid in the background of your plot, there is also an easy command. I will now show it to you on PyCharm. And of course, you can easily play with colors, with marker size, with line styles, okay? These are the basic things that you need to know, and are specified in the notes.
What does the savefig function does exactly?
It saves your plot into a file locally. So you can give it a path. Okay, if you give it, I don't know, user, David, desktop, it will save it on your desktop. And if you don't give it a path, it will save it in the same directory as where your code is, with the file name that you choose. Okay? So let's try, and I encourage you as every time to do it on your computer together. Okay. So so I import matplotlib as PLT, and I will also import NumPy because that's always useful. And let's start with the simplest plot we mentioned before. So usually it's very good practice to start with this line, okay? And what this line does is that it opens a specific figure. And so if you have several figures in your code, okay, every time you do this, it will open a new figure. Otherwise, it will overplot things in the same figure, and you usually don't want this to happen. So you can either do fig equal to this, or okay. And now I want it to plot 1, 2, 3, 4, and 3, 7, 4, 9. Okay. And I want it to show us what it's doing. So what's going on?
It says you don't have MATLAB.
Yes, this is no MATLAB. It's not. It's saying I don't have matplotlib. Okay, so this means I will have to do it because I usually don't use them. It's very weird though. Why is it doing this? Okay, let me try something, and if it doesn't work, I will do it from IPython.
מעיין,
כן.
ה-GPT אמר לי על זה שלכתוב פיגר ולא פיג, ואז עוד
הוא מתלונן שאין את הספרייה.
לא יודעת, תיקנתי את זה בפיגר וזה עובד.
מה
כאילו
פה?
גם היה את אותה בעיה. השני. לא זה, זה שליד הסוגריים. בסוף.
זה?
כן.
I doubt. If it worked, I would need someone to explain me why it's working. You understand? But because okay, so one of the ability that is important to develop is to learn how to read the errors. Okay, it's not always very intuitive, but it's very important. Okay, so I will try from a different directory, and if it doesn't work, we'll see what we do. Okay, I found a way around this. Okay, it's because it doesn't matter why it's not working, but I will be running the code from the terminal. Okay, it doesn't have to bother you. Okay, so this is my code. I'm running it here. It's the same as. Okay, and this is what it's plotting. Okay, so do we understand why that's the plot? So it's plotting 1, 2, 3, 4 in the x-axis. What? Yes. Okay, now I want to elaborate this a bit. So I will add a grid in the background because I think it's always very useful.
Scatter is also commented.
Yes, I will talk about it in a second. And I want it to be plot in red. Okay, the default is blue. And I want to have both lines between the dots. So you saw that by default it's just plotting lines between them. So I want there to be both lines, but dashed lines, and I want there to be big markers at the places of the dots. Okay, so I would add marker equal. I want a big point. Okay, no, I want a star. Okay, and I want it to be pretty big. Marker size equal 15. Okay, and I also want some lines, but I want the lines to be dashed. Okay, so let's see what happens if I run this. I need to close this. Actually, I will plot the two figures so that you can see the difference. Okay, so let's do it. And I will also add a title. Okay, so you remember the way: plot title equal, this is the first basic plot. Okay, and title, this is a more elaborate. Okay, so you see the difference. And okay, I have two plots here. The first one is what Python would plot by default if I only gave it two arrays to plot, two 1D arrays to plot. And this is when I added all these additional keywords. So the line style, it can have all kind of line styles here. It can have dots. Let's see what happens. Okay, it's complaining about this, so let's do that. Okay, it's telling me here all the Okay, so here I've made something more fancy with like dashed and dots, and there are stars here. Okay, and I made the marker size pretty big. Okay, now one important thing for the colors here, there are several ways to use. So there is a basic list of colors which contains red, blue, green, magenta, cyan, and black, and yellow, and orange. Okay, and for these colors you don't have to specify the full name of the color. You can just put R. You can put the first letter of the colors. Okay, and if you want some more some fancier sets of colors, you would have to import additional color scales. Okay, but you can put here red or just R. And let's now do something even fancier. So I want to overplot two things. So same X, no, not the same X-axis. 5, and here 4, 8, 9, 5. Okay. Color equal blue. Okay. And I like to show you a different set of so I want round markers. Okay, and marker size of 20. I want the markers to be bigger. And let's do this. It's complaining because, okay. Okay. Okay, now let's do the labels that I mentioned earlier. So I wanted to add x labels, x axis, and y label, okay? And I also wanted to plot the thing only between 1.5 and 3.8. Okay, so the way to do it is PLTXlim 1.5 and 3.8. Okay, let's try it. Okay, so I hope this gives you a feeling of how easy it is. It's really, really easy to plot things very quickly with Python. All the commands that I'm showing here, you don't have to know by heart all the different line styles, of course, but you need to know that there is a keyword called ls, okay? Now, if you want to add a legend, let's do it. Let's assume that you have two plots, like we did two curves, and you gave each of the curves a label. First plot, okay, label, okay, and let's have a look what it will do in this case. So it's adding the legend. It's having a hard time here because the markers are so big, but and one important thing to realize is that really every question regarding plotting has been answered already by someone on Stack Overflow. I personally find Stack Overflow to still be slightly more accurate than ChatGPT. I don't know, maybe they improved it lately, but Stack Overflow for plotting things has all the answers to everything. Okay, good. So these are the basic things, the basic commands, and these again are things that you need to know. Here I mentioned the option to have LaTeX commands here. So let's assume I want to have a Greek letter here, lambda, or yeah. Okay, so it's adding the Greek letter. Okay, very easy, very straightforward. Okay, now let's assume that you want to do subplots. Okay, you want to, this is the last thing I will show today, and I will show you either I will show you the interpolate example next time, or the tutors will show it to you. Okay, so let's assume that you want to have subplots. So two plots in the same figure. This can happen very often. Okay, so let's do it. So I remove this, and I'm generating some data here. Random. I'll actually do it. Okay. Okay, and show you, I will copy paste here from the notes, and then we will go through the it's quick, it's already, so yeah, we'll just make sure that you understand what it's doing. No. Okay, so this is from the notes. You don't have to worry about the 3D plotting for the moment. Just copy paste this to save time, and then we will go through everything and make sure that you understand. Okay, so what is it doing here? I'm defining one figure which will have the two first plots, the two subplots, okay? And then I'm telling it to add a subplot, okay? So eventually it will have 4 subplots. I'll do it, and then we'll go through the lines. Is it showing? Yes, it's showing. Okay. Okay. So let's look at these subplots. So we'll start with this. Okay, so these numbers here are telling me that I have 2 lines, 1 column. Okay, let's start with this. Okay, so here this is telling me that I'm making a grid of subplots, okay, which has 2 lines and 1 column. Okay, 2 lines and 1 column, and this number is indexing the subplots. You understand? No. Let's assume that I want to have 2 subplots, one on top of the other. Okay, so I can look at it as an array of plots, right? So one on top of the other, it means what? It means a 1D array which has 2 lines and 1 column, right? Okay, so these 2 first numbers, they specify the shape of my array. Okay, so 2 lines, 1 column. And then this number, it specifies which subplot I'm going to be talking about in the next lines. Make sense? Okay, so 1 is the first line. Okay, and then I'm telling it plot the first data in red, and this means that I want it to be a line. Okay, this dot here, red with a line. You'll practice it in the tutorial too. Okay, and I want a title which is Tim the Enchanter. Okay, now here one important thing is that when I have subplots, I don't use the type in. Before I used PLT title. Okay, it's not the same syntax when I have subplots. When I have subplots, I'm using set titles. Okay, because axis 1 here is not exactly the same object as before. Okay, same for X label and Y label. I'm using the set syntax. Okay, and now what this means is that I'm still in the same grid, but I'm now moving on, Matan, to the next one. Okay, to 2. Okay, and on the second one, I will be plotting things in blue, B, with dots. Okay, And let's see if this is what it's been doing. Yes. Okay, so first plot is red with lines, second plot is blue with dots. Okay. Now let's assume I want a more complex grid. I want 4 plots. Okay. So the way to specify that I want 4 plots, this is what I'm doing here. So my grid now is a 2 by 2. Okay, you see, it's 2 by 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. They specify the position of the subplots. Make sense? Okay, and I'm looking if there is anything new here. So the first plot will be red with a line, then blue with a line, then blue with stars markers. And the last one is stars in orange and dotted dashed lines like I did before. Okay? And let's make sure we understand that this is indeed what it's plotting. Okay, so do you understand why the title here is only on this plot? Why is it the case? Because set title is only specified for this figure. Okay, you can specify them individually. Okay, and same for the X and Y label, right? I only set the Y labels here and the X label. Okay, so this thing is the most elaborate things we want you to be able to do without spending too much time diving into your material. Okay, this is a syntax that you need to be familiar with. Yes.
What does the figure function does?
This?
Yeah.
So this is opening a new figure. If you don't have this, it will be overplotting on the same figure. So if you have a code with several figures, actually I always do it. It's good practice because you don't have to worry if you have any other figure in your code. You just do it by default and it opens a new figure.
And if you add another plot, where will it add it here? Without doing another figure. Because we have 4 places.
What? Okay, I would just say that we finished. I'm happy to answer questions, but if someone needs to run, it's fine. So what is the question?
If you add another function. Yeah.
If I add another plot.figure?
No, without figure, just plot something at random.
It will be plotting it on this, in the same figure.
But you have
to try?
4 different plots.
Right. So let's try it. נראה לי? זה תמיד פה?
פעם
עם
אחרונה.
רינת?
הוא אמור להיות פעם.
So let's try. I never do this. So
Finished for today?
yes. Okay, so you see what it did? It added this figure, the last one. It added it in the 224. Because this was the one that was last opened. Okay? This is why it's just good practice to add this plt.figure in the beginning of every figure. Okay? It was a lot towards the end, but you will practice a lot plotting.
Are you going to upload the PowerPoint presentation as well?
Yes,